While Hope comes up, I just want to ask, how many of you here have been to the Mission Central Hub? A number of you here have been. It is just really exciting. Mission Central, she's going to tell us the story of Mission Central. We have been involved hands-on through the local hub. We've been involved with our generosity and putting together flood buckets. We've been involved with our generosity with our Christmas Eve offering for Mission Central, and it's just wonderful to be able to get this personal connection with their work. So, Hope, we're so thankful for you.
I am missing one thing, and then I'll start, I promise. Okay, so I saw how many of you have been to the hub. Has anyone actually been to the Mechanicsburg location? Oh, okay. 2. Good. Well, then I'm going to tell you lots about it, and maybe your interest will be piqued, and the next time you come down, you'll be able to see it. I am, like JP said, I'm Hope Harrison. I've been the executive director since November, so I'm still pretty new. I will claim that as long as I can, so when I don't know an answer, I can say I don't know. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Mission Central, about the history of it, about some of the really cool things that happened there, and about some of the things that are happening there now. So Mission Central's mission is to connect God's resources with human need, and that literally is what we try to do day in and day out. We don't care what your background is, what your religion is, where you come from. We are there to serve people and to connect what we have with the needs that are out there. Really simply put, Mission Central is just a place of miracles, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of those miracles today, and talk to you a little bit about where we came from. So first, hopefully some of you recognize this picture. This is Bishop Irons, who was a bishop several bishops ago. And so Bishop Irons had this vision of starting a mission warehouse where items would be collected and those items would be connected with people. And so from that, he established a task force, and they talked about it, and they looked at the feasibility of it, and they decided that yes, this was something that could happen. And they had engineers draw up plans and architects put together things, and they went to annual conference in 2001 and had everyone approve it. And so we had this plan for a 20,000 square foot building that was going to be right beside the conference center where it is now. It was going to cost us about $3.5 million. But God does what God does and decided that we were going to take a slightly different route. And so this is a picture of what was going to be, and this is a picture of a building that Bishop Irons actually had to drive by one day when he had to take a detour to work because a bridge was out. And he saw a sign that was for lease, and there was something inside of him that said, you know, you really should check this out. So he went to his task force and he said, task force, I'd like you to go and check this building out. And so they went and looked, and they discovered that not only was it what we had in mind, but it was more than what we had in mind. And the people who owned it were Christian businessmen that really only wanted to lease it, but they found out what we wanted to do, and they said, we're going to sell it to you. And not only are we going to sell it to you, but we're going to tithe 10% back to you of the selling price. So we went from a 20,000 square foot building for $3.5 million to a 48,000 square foot building that was going to cost us $2.5 million, and they tithed back $250,000, which is pretty phenomenal. Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. But what happened was, in a few weeks, we got a building when we thought it was going to take us a couple years to plan. So when you're building a building, you have all of this time to strategically plan how you're going to make it work. We ended up having a couple weeks, which is great, but a little scary when you're not quite sure what you're going to do. And so something happened out of that kind of has become another part of our mission, and that's to provide low-cost, no-cost warehouse space to nonprofits, most of them faith-based, who otherwise wouldn't be able to exist. And so that's where our very first partner came in, and that's Bethesda Mission. For those of you who aren't familiar with the area of Harrisburg that well, Bethesda Mission is a pretty well-known faith-based organization that runs and is most well-known for men's and women's shelters. So they have shelters for homeless people, they teach spiritual enrichment and those types of things. But one of the other really cool things that they do is they have a food bank ministry. They, however, in 2002 didn't have space for it. They had equipment and warehouse knowledge, and we had space, and it became this beautiful marriage of the two. And so they came in and have been there ever since. And we treat our partnerships not just as tenant and landlord, but we really have this very integrated partnership. Right now we have 2 full-time people that work for Bethesda that are housed within our unit, and we work with them on a daily basis on things. And at this point, they're actually the only location where they do their food bank ministry is out of Mission Central, and they outsource about 150,000 pounds of food per month, which is a lot of food. Let's see if you guys can get there with your initiative. And that feeds that outsources to about 200 community food banks. And so we're able to do that through the warehouse mission that we have, which is really cool. One of the other really cool things, I talked a little bit about it at the beginning about how God has intervened, is that God intervenes at Mission Central pretty much all the time. And so we call those things God moments, and those are really just, there's no other explanation than that God has made them happen. And so I took a few God moments and put them in this morning because I think they're just cool things to hear. They range from small to large, so I have a few that are a little bit more significant, but we see little tiny God moments every day, and it's so neat. So you see a picture of some suitcases. Seems pretty innocuous. But shortly after we opened, there was a man who brought some suitcases in, and he said, "I saw your ad in the paper. I know you want suitcases." And we had never put an ad in the paper, and we didn't know where that came from. And it happened. He was adamant that we put an ad in the paper. So the executive director wasn't quite sure what he'd do with them, but he knew that there was a reason that they came, so he took them. And the man came back about 2 or 3 other times and brought more suitcases because he saw this ad that he claims was there. Until we had about 25 or 30, and we weren't sure what we were going to do with them. But shortly after the man made the 3rd trip, a man came in that was going on a mission trip, and he said, "I need 30 suitcases." So it was every suitcase that we had, because what oftentimes people on mission trips do is they will take a second suitcase and fill it with supplies and be able to leave it there. And a lot of people in developing countries don't actually have dressers, so they can keep these, especially the hard case ones, for dressers. So it kind of serves a dual purpose. And from that man that came out of nowhere and never came back after that, mind you, we started this suitcase ministry that still continues today. If you come into our warehouse, we have 3 Gaylords, so the big pallets of suitcases that kind of just cycle in and out on a continual basis. There's another God moment related to this baby scale, this mechanical baby scale. We had a group call us that said, "We really are looking for a mechanical baby scale. We're going on a mission trip. We're going to a remote village in Africa, and we want to teach them about childcare and maternity and those kinds of things." And so we had one, which was great, but they needed it to be in New Jersey the next morning to be on a flight by noon. And ironically, our executive director was headed that way the next morning to go visit his in-laws, and it was about 20 minutes from the airport. So we were able to put that connection together, which in and of itself was a God moment. But what I think is really cool is that the person who donated this had it in the back of her car for a couple months, and she drove around, and she knew she wanted to drop it off at Mission Central, but she just didn't have the time, like most of us. I always have something in my car that needs to go somewhere, and it sits there for a while. But that one particular morning, she just felt this need to take it, and so she dropped it off, and that was the exact day that they called for it. So we know that, it's not just coincidence when these things happen. And another one that I also think is really cool is related to, not this particular one, because this is a stock photo, but a wheelchair that's outfitted specially, and this one has special off-road tires. We had another missionary who was located in Africa who came in. She often came in when she was home, and she would walk around and see what she needed and put all of her items together. And she said, "Look, I have a boy in my village that has never had mobility. He's homebound, he doesn't get to go out, and we need a wheelchair that has off-road tires because there aren't any roads there, it's all dirt." We had never had one. We never heard of one. We had never gotten one in. And so we told her, unfortunately, we didn't have one, but she amassed all of her other supplies, and she had a pretty small car with her that day, so she put everything in that she had, and then whatever she couldn't get, she said, "I'll be back in a couple days and get it." And right in between there, which was just 2 or 3 days, we received a wheelchair with some off-road tires, which we, again, in years and years, had never seen before. So we were able to give her that when she came back and give that boy mobility that he never had before. Talk talk to you a little bit about our partnership with UMCOR. Those of you who have been to Shoemaker and done some flood buckets, so you're aware of what UMCOR does, but for those of you who aren't, UMCOR is the United Methodist Committee on Relief, and they are really well known in the disaster relief community. It's oftentimes the first entity that goes in when a disaster happens, and oftentimes it's the last to leave. And we've had a partnership with UMCOR since just after we opened, and it has been a really beneficial relationship for us and has allowed us to be a direct part of almost every weather-related disaster that we've had in the United States and abroad. So these should look familiar to some of you. Those are flood buckets and hygiene kits. We do those on a continual basis all year long. We don't wait till something hits to do it. We're doing it all the time because it's important that we have those ready to go. And everything that we put together has to be consistent. So not only are they created, they're verified, and it's a really time-consuming process. As soon as UMCOR asks, they're ready to go. If you come in our warehouse, you'll see piles and piles up to the ceiling of flood buckets and hygiene kits, and we just sent out, I think, 22,300 hygiene kits 2 weeks ago to UMCOR, and over 5,100 flood buckets. So that's just something that we're constantly doing. But that has been one of our really key partnerships. We're one of 6 facilities in the United States that supplies to UMCOR, and Mission Central Mechanicsburg is actually the largest of all of those. So we've been a great resource to them as well. The proximity of our location actually helps us to determine what we do. So we feel that we're doing good by sending things to UMCOR, but if it's close enough, we like to do boots on the ground too. And so these are some pictures of Hurricane Sandy when it hit New Jersey in 2002. We were able to take what we had and just load it up. We had diapers and clothes and food and flood buckets and anything that we had. We were able to drive the 3 hours to get there and help. And we actually ended up being a staging area as well for all of the volunteers and Mission from conference that went. So you'll see we actually had so many supplies that we had to have a whole flatbed and a couple other trucks to take, and we like to be able to do that as well, but oftentimes it's much farther than us, so we end up sending supplies. Mission Central's partnership with UMCOR has really enabled us, like I said, to be a part of disasters, but we don't limit it to UMCOR. So sometimes UMCOR has made the decision to not go internationally when there's a disaster. So when Puerto Rico was hit just a few years ago, we were able to work with our contacts to be able to get a lot of our supplies in, not through UMCOR, and to be able to get through customs, which is oftentimes a difficult thing. So we've worked with any and all organization that we can just to connect those resources. I'm gonna hit the wrong button. And I always like to talk a little bit about Hurricane Katrina, which still to this day was the deadliest and most costliest hurricane that has hit the United States. And we were able to supply tons of supplies to them, but had Bishop Irons taken a different way to work that day, or just decided to kind of ignore that feeling within him, we would have still been working on the planning phase. We would not have had our partnership with UMCOR. We would have not been prepared to send those things abroad. And so we are so grateful for that tug that he had and the ability to have been involved in that. And that kind of brings me to talk a little bit about some other missions that we do. And there's a little picture in the corner of Jean Norris, who is part of our board and has been with us for quite some time. But Hurricane Katrina was really how she got involved. That's kind of how the link is there. Her husband was a United Methodist pastor in Altoona, and he had been traveling down to volunteer, and she would tag along, and she wasn't really sure what it was all about and how she wanted to be involved, but she felt like she wanted to be involved. And so she talked to the executive director and said, you know, where do I fit? And he had told her that we had started a new medical mission that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but you know, we collect all kinds of medical supplies and we send them out, but we needed people with knowledge to be able to sort those materials. The organization that we work with requires that things are organized in a certain fashion that's slightly above those of us who don't have a medical background. And so she looked at him and she said, I'm a nurse. And that kind of began her work with us, and she's been here ever since. And she also has been a great part in the establishment of our hubs. And I'm so glad that so many of you know the Shoemaker Hub and have been there. It is a great and active hub. But in 2006, we realized that our conference is pretty big. And so people were traveling quite a distance to get to us. And we love that, and we're happy that people would want to do that. But we also realized that it made sense to have some space in different communities, that people could go closer, and that it would give the opportunity that if there's a disaster there, that we had that physical presence. And so we started hubs in 2007. And really, what we did was allow them to choose what works best for them. Every hub operates a little differently. Some are in church basements, some are their own entity, some are, in a closet, some just collect supplies, some do other things. But it gives us the opportunity to get communication out there with a hub coordinator right in your area, and for them to give information to us and to be that point of contact in each of those communities. They also collect lots of supplies for us and send them, and we do the same when there's a need in those communities. And so these hubs, or these mini mission centrals, to this point from 2007 have expanded from just 4 to 40. And our northernmost is in Maine, and our southernmost is in Central Virginia. So we have a great base, and we have some wonderful hubs. I spent a whole day at the Culpeper, Virginia hub a couple months ago, where they had several youth groups come and just do a day of just packaging things and creating kits. And it's really awesome to see what our hubs are doing. If you haven't been to Shoemaker, please go. Just see the great work that they're doing there. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the additional partners or in-house ministry partners who utilize our space. We talked about Bethesda Mission. We have 3 other main partners, New Digs, Computer Ministry, and Project Cure. And I just want to talk just slightly about what they do and kind of how that works together. Computer Ministry is an organization that takes pretty much any electronic you can think of, with the exception of TVs, and rehabs them. So they have a lot of volunteers who are Microsoft Office certified. They take them, they wipe them clean, they fix them up. What they can't utilize, they will recycle. They have a recycling program to get money to put back in their ministry, because we all believe in sustainability there. And what they do is outfit clinics and hospitals and schools and all kinds of things that don't have money, both locally and internationally. And to date, they've given out over 21,000 computers. So they do a great, great work. And then this is a couple photos of the medical mission that we have. That's specifically with an organization called Project Cure. And Project Cure is the largest distributor of medical items internationally that comes out of the United States. So we have morphed what we do with them into what we do individually in our local community. We collect pretty much any medical item that's not a prescription. Walkers, canes, hospital beds, anything like that, and people call us and they say, I need one, my insurance isn't covering it, I don't know what to do. We don't ask questions, we don't ask about your finances, we don't ask about, returning it. We believe that if you're contacting us, you need it. And so we've got that running physically out of our location. And we also collect those items that need to be sorted by RNs, or someone with a medical background, that go internationally with our partnership with Project Cure. And I think it's cool to talk about a God moment related to medical. We get medical-related God moments all the time. We get wonderful stories from people and a lot of tearful pleas. But this is a really cool story, in my opinion. It relates to an MRI machine. If you've had an MRI before, you know how big these machines are and costly. And for us, it's kind of a pain. You have to go. But for these people in countries where they don't have them, this is a necessity. And this is something where you'll see when they finally get an MRI machine, people are lined up just to be able to go and get that MRI. And so in 2009, Radiologists Without Borders, which is the equivalent of Doctors Without Borders for radiologists, gave this to us and said, here, we've got this MRI machine. Do you want it? And we knew we'd find a place for it. But when we got it, we realized that there were 2 kind of things that weren't so great for us. One, that we needed to have it connected to electricity all the time. It needed to have a constant source of electricity. This is beyond my medical knowledge why, but it does. And second, it's so big and heavy that a lot of countries that don't have one couldn't get one. They couldn't figure out how to get it on the roads. The roads would just collapse. So we kept it. We kept it for a long time. And in 2011, Central America had really been devastated by a lot of storms and flooding and those types of things. And the ambassador to Honduras came to Mission Central and took a tour around to try to figure out what things he could get for Honduras. And he saw the MRI machine and he said, we need this in Honduras. And we were more than happy to give it to him. But we weren't quite sure how it was going to get there because Honduras isn't next door. So we were able to work with our volunteers to get a connection with a trucking company who did all of the permits and all of the work for us to get it to Miami. So we were a little closer. And then he was able, the ambassador was able to get it on a Chiquita banana boat to Honduras, which sounds really funny, but if you ever come to Mission Central, all you see are banana boxes. And until recently, I just thought it was because we had them. But apparently they are the strongest box and you can use them as ladders even. So someone knows that's shaking their heads. I didn't know, but now you know. But we use Chiquita banana boxes all the time. But that's so cool. But then we wondered, how is it going to get from the port to where it needs to go? Because these roads aren't made for that. And ironically, they were working on a super highway there that was going to run from the port to the capital city. And 1 week before it left Mission Central, the ribbon cutting for the highway happened. So it was able to get there. And we're firm believers in Mission Central that, you know, whether you're just praying for something or laying hands on it, that we're sending it with our love and God's presence. And so we had some volunteers who took some time to pray in both English and Spanish over the truck that was going and over the MRI machine. And we're told that when it arrived, they could still see handprints on the MRI machine. So we think that's a really cool God moment, because had all those things not lined up, that MRI machine would not have made it there. And our last main partner that I like to talk about is New Digs. It's commonly referred to where we are as the furniture ministry. They do furniture, housewares, linens, anything that you need if you're starting out on your own. We get people that come from domestic violence situations or their house burned down or something like that. Everyone must be referred by either a social service organization, a pastor, someone who can verify that they truly are in need. And what I think is really cool about this is they then meet with a volunteer who talks to them about their needs. Do you have a family of 2? Do you have a family of 10? What are your living spaces like? And then they get to shop. So we don't just hand them things. We say, what do you want? And that day they take their linens and their housewares, and then they come back within a few weeks to get their furniture. And every year, about $1 million worth of supplies are given out specifically to those families, and it's about 3,000 families a year. It's a very cool ministry that runs out of the warehouse as well. We've added a few other small nonprofits. Currently, we have about 15 nonprofits of varying spaces, but Healthy Steps Diaper Bank hands out diapers to women who complete a course so that they can get out of poverty and back into the workforce in order to get their kids in daycare. Daycares do not take, like my mom used when I was a kid, cloth diapers. They won't. They all have to be disposable, and they're expensive. Having 3 kids, I can tell you they're very expensive. So they give those out so they can get them in daycare. And Change Purse works to end human trafficking in the area, which sounds like it's not a big problem, but being on Facebook, you see all the time, my 15-year-old's gone, I don't know where she is, it's been a couple days, and without networks like this, they get lost in the system. So they do a great job with that. All in all, we work with internally and externally about 180 organizations, and we actually are expanding that every day. We don't turn organizations away. If there's a need and we have it, we will work to make sure that we can help anyone who asks. So how does this happen? We have a pretty small staff at Mission Central. There's 8 of us. There's 5 full-time and 3 part-time people. And so it's hard to do on our own. And so we are very, very fortunate within Mission Central Mechanicsburg to have between 7,000 and 8,000 volunteers every year that come and do work for us, some on a daily basis, some come once a month, some come once a year. Everyone that comes, we're just so happy to have them as the Mission Central family. And every year, those volunteers work over 20,000 hours, so that's the equivalent of 10 full-time people. We could not do what we do without our volunteers, and we don't yet have a system to count all the volunteers at the hub, so this is not counting the hub volunteers, but I know that the hubs are extremely grateful for all the volunteers who come there as well, because they're staffed minimally, and so that helps do all the good that's being done. And every year, we donate between $6 and $8 million of resources out of the warehouse, and it helps millions of people every year. So that, again, doesn't include all the hubs. We don't have a system yet to collect all those, but Shoemaker, for instance, I know does lots of work. So there's probably additional millions of dollars of things coming out of each one of those hubs. It's very important for us to note, because we think it's just a good thing to make sure that people know that everything that we do is donated. So everything we get is donated, everything we give out is donated. We don't sell anything. With our medical missions, for instance, if people donate a couple dollars for something, it's fabulous. We never ask for anything, for money for things that we sell or give. It's very important for us that we are just connecting that resource. I want to talk to you just a little bit about some of the highlights that we had from 2018. So I'm going to show you a little video and then follow up with it. So hopefully you all got a bulletin-sized version of this today. This just has those statistics, and it's our infographic for 2018 that just were up in the video. How many people we serve, how many resources go out, and what I think is really cool about 18 is that 81% of that $7 million worth of resources stayed in Pennsylvania. So we love to be able to help people internationally, but we also love to be able to help people locally, and so there is a great need in Pennsylvania, and I think that's a great statistic that we were able to achieve last year. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without churches, and over half of our annual budget is funded by the generous giving of individual United Methodist churches, and I want to thank you here. I know that each year, for the last few years, you've been so kind to give us your Christmas Eve offering, and so that has been so beneficial to us, and I thank you for that. I thank you for support in that way. Whoops. Excuse me. So we have this in our scripture verse for today, in our scripture lesson, but this is so important for us at Mission Central that, whatever we do for the least of these, we're doing for Christ. And so whether you are volunteering, giving us donations, financially giving us donations of items, you are being part of that network to be the hands and feet of Christ, and we're just so grateful for that. You allow us to do what we do. If you are not familiar with us, other than what I've said today, I encourage you to visit our website. We have a presence on social media if you're so inclined. We also send out a weekly e-newsletter that you can sign up for just to see the things that we're doing. We try to get some cool pictures whenever we can. We just sent out a shipping container this past week to Ghana, and it was really cool to watch a minivan actually go into the container to go that was filled floor to ceiling. So we try to always get pictures of that just to show the cool things that are happening. I do want to thank you again for inviting me to speak, and I hope that your interest was piqued in Mission Central, and I hope that I will hear from some of you and interested in seeing a little bit more about what we do. Thank you so much.
Is this like something that is unique?
This is, yeah. And so we're working, I'm pretty new, we're working on kind of getting the word out about that, because this is not something that every conference does. This is not something that, other denominations do. They have Corps-like organizations. They don't have Mission Central-like organizations. So we're trying to get the word out about it more.
Thank you very much, Hope. Let's have a prayer together, folks. God, again, we thank you for Hope sharing the story of Mission Central. We thank you for the incredible ways in which you're at work, making things happen, and we don't even know what you're doing until everything is put together. We're grateful for that gift. And we pray that you continue to prosper the work of Mission Central and the partnership that we share. In Jesus' name, amen. So once they finally figure out a way to count everything that happens through the hubs, I know at the Shoemaker Hub we always sign in, so they know how many people are there. And I know they have, the Shoemaker Hub is an old church building, and the sanctuary space, which is upstairs, is all, it's like that New Digs furniture thing. It's all furniture and housewares, linens, and they turn that inventory over every 2 weeks. Chris?
Tell us where the Shoemaker Hub is. Is it open? Is that the one over at 44 or that way? Where is the Shoemaker one?
Is that the right answer? I don't know enough of my geography to answer that question, except I put it in my phone and I look for it and I go there. Okay.
And if you go to our website, there's a list of all the hubs and the actual physical addresses that are there.
Yeah. So, and I think our next hub date it's in October. I forget the date right now, but we have a date coming up in October. It'll be a Sunday afternoon, and so whoever's going on the team, there'll be lunch served here, and then folks will go over for a couple hours and put some kits together and volunteer there. Let's stand together. Our hymn's number 593.